All right, good morning. We're on Perek Dalid, Pasuk Aleph, the first Pasuk in the Perek. Pasuk goes as follows: Shimu banim musar av vekshivu ladat bina. Hear, children of the father's discipline, and be attentive to know understanding. What's up? We just started. And then page 92, the first Pasuk of the Perek. Then he says, Ki lekach tov natati lachem torati al ta'azovu. Sammy knows the Pasuk by heart because he's the rabbi of the 7:30 minyan. He says, for I have given you a good teaching, and do not forsake my Torah. Then he continues and says, Ki ben haiti le'avi rach ve'yachid lifnei imi. For I was a son to my father, a tender and only son before my mother. Then he says, ve'yorani ve'yomer li itmach devarai libach shomer mitzotai ve'chayeh. He says, he taught me and said to me, let my words sustain your heart, observe my commandments and live. Okay, so let's go from the beginning. As we know, when Shlomo HaMelech says banim, he's talking like a plea, not an order. He doesn't say, if you realize here, he doesn't say obey, he says listen. Why? Because real wisdom cannot be forced onto someone. You must choose to hear it. There's a famous sefer, I forgot exactly what it's called, but when I was learning this in yeshiva, he brought down that when you want to teach something to someone, he says the more the person doesn't want to listen, the more they'll resent it, and you're not going to get anywhere. So, like he's saying here, real wisdom must be listened to the point that you actually have to want it, right? He calls us banim, not because we're immature, because banim children are usually immature, but he's saying it because a child listens to a parent from a place of trust and love.
Yeah.
So when you trust and love your father, you trust and love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they'll listen to them. And Shlomo is saying here that if you want a meaningful life, and if you want to live that type of life, you must be willing to hear the guidance from someone else, even when it's hard. Musar, a lot of times musar is uncomfortable, right? It challenges, what you're trying to do, challenges your habits. It also pushes you to grow, and it points out where you need to fix yourself. But if you listen, you really listen, what happens? You start
to Hashem.
You listen to Musar in general, to Hashem and to Hashem's teachings from the rabbis, from other people, to your improvement. If you want to improve yourself, right? You start to understand yourself, and you start gaining clarity, and you feel more of control in your life, and you stop bumping into the same mistakes that you're making before. So practical idea is that when someone gives you feedback or advice, don't try to explain back to him why you did whatever you did. Listen to him. A child, a lot of times when a parent gives him discipline, he's like, nah, this, that. Just listen.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what truth have you been hiding from yourself? Find yourself a rabbi or mentor who could guide you with this musar. Treat musar as not a criticism, but as a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to improve yourself. That was Pasuk Aleph. Pasuk Bet, Ki lekach tov natati lachem torati al ta'azov, one of the famous Pasukim, for I give you a good teaching, do not abandon my Torah. Shlomo emphasizes here that he's not giving us a lecture here. He's giving us a gift, lekach tov, right? Torah, a lot of people look at Torah as a burden, but Chas v'Shalom, Torah is not a burden. Torah is really the best thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has ever given to us. Why? It gives you comfort when life gets overwhelming, right? It gives you direction when your life feels empty. It gives you purpose when life feels like you're in the middle of nowhere. Al ta'azovu, do not abandon it, not because you'll be punished, but because you'll lose your anchor in your life. When it says Torati al ta'azovu, don't lose it, because you'll lose that anchor in your life, what keeps you in check. You'll drift into a world of noise, of pressure, of stress, of emptiness. And Torah doesn't restrict your life, it protects your life. We have to change our idea of what is Torah. So a practical thing from this pasuk is that, keep your Torah in your life, not just learning the Torah, but live the Torah. Right? A lot of times we'll just learn it. Live the teachings. When you're stuck through a moment, ask yourself, what would the Torah want for me to do now? What would my rabbis want for me to do now? Not only that, also, Hashem, when you have children, teach your children what it is to live a Torah life. Make Torah the center of your day, not just an extra to your day. That's the idea. That's Pasuk Bet. Pasuk Gimel, Ki ben haiti le'avi rach ve'yachid lifnei imi. He says, for I too was a son to my father, tender and cherished by my mother. This is one of the most moving Pesukim in Mishlei. Why? Because Shlomo Melech here, who was a kind, he was a kind and genuine leader. He steps aside down from his throne here, and he's telling us. He says, "I was once a child just like you. Ki ben haiti le'avi. I was also a child to my father. Rach ve'echi le'imi. You know, even the greatest people in our lives struggled, right? Even Shlomo needed guidance, like he's saying here. Even he needed love from someone else, attention from someone else, support, discipline. He calls himself here Rach, tender. The pasuk here says tender, because Shlomo here is teaching us that, you know, the earlier you expose your heart to wisdom, the deeper it will shape your life. Right? You'll have people go through life like they're just living it, you know, just chilling. When you start off your life that I want to live a life of happiness and of wisdom and stuff like that, then ultimately you'll realize what it is. Right? A lot of times you end up kishing it because you don't want to, like he's saying, you don't want to improve yourself. You don't want to have that musar for yourself.
It's hard to do it.
It's hard to do it. It's hard to do it for some people. But you have to understand that that's the growth in my life. That's a challenge. Then he says, pasuk daled, v'yorani v'yomer li. So where is this over here?
How's the baby?
V'yorani v'yomer li itmach devar libacha shamor mitzvodav v'chayeh. Says he taught me and said, let your heart behold my words, keep my commandments, and you will live. The pasuk here is really revealing the secret of the Torah. Yitmoch devar libecha, let your heart hold my words, the words of the Torah. Wisdom that stays in your brain disappears because it's just staying here. Wisdom has to go in the heart, right? Wisdom that enters your heart transforms who you are.
Yeah.
Right? Shlomo is quoting David HaMelech himself here. He's saying that, my son, don't let the Torah be informative, let it be your identity. And then he says, Shemor mitzvotai v'chayeh, keep the mitzvot and you will live. Not you will survive, not you will avoid punishment from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but you will live. Which means you'll live a life of meaning, of understanding, feeling alive, being awake, living a life that's meaningful to you. A lot of times we live a life that we're just surviving. We're not living.
Yeah.
The biggest beracha is to understand that you're living a life that's living. That's not just surviving. Making every second of your life count. You know, I was saying this morning. You know, imagine I gave you a pie of pizza. I bought you a pie of pizza. And I asked you for a slice. What would you say? Of course, I bought it for you.
Yeah.
Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you 24 hours a day in your life. He's asking for an hour to dedicate to him. What are you going to say? No, he gave you the 24 hours, right?
Right.
But make that your life, you know? When you go to work, you know, make that your work. You know, put the Torah into action. That's really the idea. And also pray that the Torah should resonate within you, not just pass through you. Understand? That's what it is. Okay, the next pasuk, Kaneh chokhmah, Kaneh bina, al tishkach ve'al tet meimre pi. Acquire wisdom, acquire understanding. Do not forget and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. This is what Shlomo Melech is saying. Shlomo Melech is saying here, he's using the words kaneh, buy it. Why? Because wisdom requires a lot of investment, right? You can't just, it costs your time, it costs your effort to acquire it. And sometimes a lot of times it causes your comfort because you have to improve. But it's the best purchase you'll ever make. Why? Because there are many things that you spend money on that disappear. You buy food, you buy this, you buy that, everything disappears, right? The food that you eat will, you know, the food you end up eating. Your phones end up breaking, you know, cars depreciate, right? But what happens with wisdom? What happens? It stays with you. It stays with you. And it shapes every decision you make, and it protects you from the mistakes that you do. Why? Because you have that wisdom within yourself. It's fine, don't worry. No, but the wisdom strengthens everything within your life.
100%.
So what he's saying, he says, Al tishkach ve'al tet meimre pi. You know, don't forget and don't drift away, because forgetting Torah doesn't happen like we said in one moment. It happens when you slowly drift away. And Shlomo Melech is saying here, stay anchored, Stay learning. Stay
What was
growth
that?
oriented.
What you say? Drift away?
Drift away. Yeah.
When you're not learning, you're drifting away,
Oh,
you say?
I was saying. No, I was saying.
Or
I was saying this the other day. You don't have to do bad to be bad. You just have to stop doing
not
good.
do good. Yeah, I
Why?
like that.
Because the world around you is a world of just pushing different ideologies, and that's pushing us down.
Yeah,
So when you're not doing good, you end up being with them.
yeah.
But when you do good, you're counteracting that. You know.
Very true.
So the idea here is that having a fixed time a day to learn, like you're coming here, you know, that's non-negotiable. That you're making a time for Hakadosh Baruch Hu, no matter what. You know. Not only that, reviewing what you learn so you don't forget it, so you avoid forgetting it. The Gemara brings down, there's an analogy it brings down. It says learning without reviewing is like planting without harvesting. What does that mean, planting without harvesting? You planted something, but you forgot about it, so it's useless. Your Torah, if you didn't review your Torah, what happened? The Torah needs to stay in here. You have to remember it.
You're right.
You know, and that's really the idea. Surround yourself with people who can spiritually elevate you and get you to the next level. B'ezrat Hashem, and that's really the idea of this pasuk.
Amazing.